Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. My name is Amanda Miller, and I am the Associate Director for the National Consortium of Data Science. It is my great pleasure to welcome you all to the 2022 NCDS Fall Career Panel. We've been hosting this event for about 8 years. Our first convening in 2014 was an in-person event, and we welcomed around 35 attendees. It is so easy to get trapped into looking at all of the challenges the pandemic raised in our work and student lives, but I cannot tell you the joy it brings me to know that we are able to offer this event with speakers zooming in from Milwaukee and Atlanta, with students joining us from Joliet Junior College in Illinois to Jackson State University in Mississippi, Georgetown University in Washington, D.C., and UC Berkeley. Nearly 500 students registered for this event. You represent academic fields ranging from civil engineering, public policy, economics, physiological ecology, and biostatistics to data science, mathematics, and integrative life sciences. This breadth of academic pursuits gives me hope. This range of lenses that you are using to analyze and solve problems using data will bring a fresh perspective to data science that is going to push this field forward. So thank you for taking the time to be here today. And, no pressure. Just a couple of quick housekeeping items. Around 12:40, we are going to share an easy retro board along with instructions where you will be able to ask questions of the panelists and moderator. Do try to stick around for the end of the event. We have an exciting opportunity coming in March 2023 to share with all of you interested in honing your hard skills in data science. And our attendees today will be the first to hear about that event. We're here to learn, though, from an accomplished panel of professionals. Let's get things rolling with our moderator, Dr. Deborah Stroman. Dr. Stroman is the founder and CEO of the Center of Sport Business Analytics, which hosts the nationally recognized Basketball Analytics Summit. She is also a faculty member of the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill in the School of Public Health. In her role as an advisor and instructor in the equity concentration, Dr. Stroman specializes in leadership as applied to the domain of racial equity in the United States. Prior to that, she was a clinical associate professor at the UNC Kenan-Flagler Business School, providing instruction and service to students related to organizational behavior and the examination of the sport business industry. So, Dr. Stroman, I am pleased to now pass you the mic.
Thank you. Thank you to everyone that is joining us today. I'm a firm believer that the future belongs to those who prepare for it. The future belongs to those who prepare for it. So you're taking the time out of your schedule today. That means a lot. That says a lot about you. I am very, very blessed and honored to be with a wonderful group of panelists who will inform you and I believe will inspire you as well. So let's get to know our panelists. I'm going to ask each one to briefly share a bit about what their current position is, and not explaining too much about what they're doing yet. We'll get to that. But what is your current position? Then, I think about my life and growing up. I take pride in that I am a nerd. And I wonder if these folks also take pride in being a nerd, as in I enjoyed books as much as I enjoyed ball. I played basketball at the University of Virginia, did some coaching while at UNC Chapel Hill, and I love being a nerd in the midst of all my other activities. So we've got Justin, we've got Gabriel, we've got Namrata. Let's just go down and speak in terms of what is your current position and asking the question, how do you view your nerd status? I want to start off with Justin.
Yeah, hey everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. I am Justin Choi. I currently work at Google for a customer engineer. Some people may know that as like a software sales engineer. My specialty is in data analytics, and similar to Deborah, I guess I was a bit of a sports nut growing up and still am, but I do like to geek out and nerd out with the best of them when it comes to talking about data and analytics and anything that you can do with that. On the side, I like to mess around with like home automation, networking. So my background is pure computing science. That's what I studied for an undergrad. I was into a master's degree in what they would call internet working or Cisco routing information. So deep networking, but I had an opportunity to come to the United States to work. So that became the preference. But yes, I do like to geek out and nerd out on my programming side every now and then, Deborah, but I also love sports as well.
Thank you. Thank you. Gabe.
Hey everyone, my name is Gabe Farkas. I currently work for a group within IQVIA, the biggest company no one's ever heard of, that does sports injury research. And prior to that, I spent about a decade working for the NBA San Antonio Spurs doing basketball analytics and some work in clinical trials as a biostatistician as well. I've got a background in engineering and statistics. And I too was also a big sports stats geek growing up, probably about 5-6 years ago. I was back at my parents' house cleaning out some drawers because they were turning my old room into who knows what, and found an old spiral notebook that I used to keep that had like the scores of every single like NCAA, March Madness game in it, that I thought at the time when I was a kid was like some priceless artifact, and now thanks to Wikipedia is rendered completely useless. I think I don't know that I can comment on whether or not I care about being a nerd, because it is what it is. And it's just part of who I am. I think the way I like to describe it, though, I think it's about curiosity and asking questions. I've joked before that I could never be an astronaut because I can't help but ask, what's this button do? And so that's kind of where I come at it from.
Love it. Love it. Namrata.
Hi, everyone. I'm Namrata Jamani. I'm a data scientist over at Bain and Company, which is a strategy consulting firm. I've been with the company for a little over a year now after finishing my master's at the Institute for Advanced Analytics at NC State. This nerd question's got me laughing. I think the biggest indicators when I'm with a group of friends and we use, your typical consulting jargon, like, can we double click into that? What's a KPI to measure this? And it's like on normal conversations like booking a dinner date or things like that. But, it goes with the industry and kind of becomes part of your life. But I've had a really great time exploring data science and leveraging it at Bain and Company, and happy to talk about it more today.
Wonderful. So I'm going to stay with you, and I want to talk about how did we become what we became? So I want to take it from an academic perspective. Were there particular courses that you took before college? Any particular courses or favorite teachers that motivated you to keep moving forward, that it was okay to geek out or look at numbers and to connect the dots? And so how about if you speak about K through 12 first?
Okay, you're making me remember. I actually had a visceral response when anyone talked about programming or math in my household, because both of my parents are software developers. And that was the last thing I wanted to be. I didn't want to have a desk job. And I was like, Dad, I'm going to do anything but that. And now here I am with a desk job, but luckily get to travel a lot. K through 12, I was really passionate about politics and different countries, how everyone worked together, just a lot of social justice, that type of work. And I pursued that. I had a couple of teachers who really encouraged that and pushed me towards different summer camps or workshops, summer programs that I could grow. I was part of student government in high school and in college, and that sort of stuff really inspired me. I found though that you get your way most of the time when you have data to prove your point. And that's kind of what led me towards data. I did a couple of internships that were not related to data science at all initially, but as I got more and more into them, I was taught the advantage of using data effectively. And I learned that maybe I am kind of good at it. And so after that, even in college, my initial major was international business, had nothing to do with data science at all. And I added that on in college and then got my master's in data science to really solidify that background. But coming back to your point of like how I got to the point of where I am, I'd say it was just a lot of curiosity, a lot of chasing down different passions, even though they might not be data science at the time. And that's kind of what led me to my role here now.
Thank you. And I love what you said about using data effectively, because even though we're socialized and conditioned to believe that data makes the difference, actually we are a narrative-driven society, storytelling. But we seek that data. So having a clear understanding of how to present it, when to present it, that is so important. So we'll go there. Justin, what's your story in terms of how you got started?
Oh, so mine's not as great as Namrata's, because when I was growing up, I did not kind of know what I wanted to do. So I think when I started my K through 12 area, I would have probably said, because I was so interested in sports, that I wanted to do something like sports physiotherapy, something along those lines to start out with. But then on the flip side, I also liked technical drawing. So I was balancing that between the physical therapy and the drawing architect type roles. Well, again, you're a kid, things change. I got into computing. I had this wonderful idea that I was going to be like a gaming tester, because that would just be the ultimate job at the time in my mind. Well, you kind of get woken up to reality a little bit, and gaming testing in itself wasn't what it is, what I thought it would be. And I loved math. I had some great math teachers that pushed me along the way. I decided I wanted to do something with computing. So my career started actually in Australia, so things are slightly different compared to what happens here in the US. But I decided to pursue a computing science degree. What that found out that wasn't quite me, the heavy programming bit, but I was able to program, still able to program. I pursued, I like to ask a lot of questions similar to Gabe. And so after my computing science degree, I was able to do a support type role. And from there, I got into learning, just having to use data all the time, but I got into what they call the business intelligence space. And I was specializing more in the visualization area. But at the end of the day, everything came back to data and how to effectively show data and what that data meant. And that path took me to SAS, who's an analytical company. So even though I was involved with more about getting the data ready, getting the data to visualize, it was what story, as you said, is the data telling, or what story am I trying to tell with the data? And so that just led me into, again, similar to Gabe, asking more and more questions. I don't have as much as the analytical background as my fellow colleagues, but being exposed to over 25 years of analytics and usage of analytics in action. So it would blow my mind talking to customers when I work at SAS and now at Google on what they try and do or what they want to do with data. And so that's how I got to where I was. I could probably throw in there that I wanted to be a fireman probably at one stage, or a Fed, the equivalent of FBI, etc. Because just interest in so many different areas. But I'm still in data. I've been in data for a long time. It is of a huge interest. Whenever a customer asks, how do we get to XYZ? First question is, 80% of the work is always in the data and getting the data into the shape that's needed to do the type of analysis that you want. And then I will also geek out, Dr. Stroman, on like visualizations, the best way to visualize things. And, even today with everything that's been happening, whether it's statistics or statistics coming out I'm always having discussions with my wife saying that's a bad visualization or that's a bad way to show the data because it's not, it's not representing things in the right way. So I guess I geek out with her. She kind of laughs, but that's how I started. So I wouldn't say it was a direct path. It kind of snaked around, but this is where I am and I still love it. And glad to be still working with data and talking about analytics with customers and potential and the possibilities of what could happen.
Well, that is a good thing. And it's okay to do that zigzag. We know that. Gabe, how about your start?
First of all, Justin, you're touching a nerve with the right and wrong way to visualize, because numbers don't lie, people do, right? And they can be, you can visualize anything however you want and twist it, play with axes or whatever. But I think, when I was 10 years old, what did I want to be when I grew up? I think I wanted to be an archaeologist because the science, interested me. And I think probably at the time I didn't really connect all the dots between science and math and all the different things until I started to learn and get, much older. And I went through definitely a few twists and turns in my career in general. I think what I the commonality or the common thread between everything was that I enjoyed, solving puzzles, solving problems, kind of figuring out, unique or different solutions to things and figuring out how to sort of, twist or extract an answer from things. And I think that's kind of what led me to where how my career evolved is just, enjoying problem solving, enjoying puzzle solving and approaching everything as how can I figure this out? I don't know that I have as much of a drawn out answer as my, colleagues here on the panel, at least not one that's probably as interesting or articulatable. But that's really where it's at for me. And I think that's how I approach a lot of things in life. It's really just a mentality of if it's trying to figure out the most efficient way to drive to work every day or trying to figure out the most efficient way to, cook dinner, using 2 pans and a pot or whatever, or that's kind of just I can't help it in a way to just that's kind of the way I approach life. And so, a career is just an extension of that.
Well, that's a good thing when you can approach both of them in the same way. So here's a question for you, Gabe. And in fact, I'm going to ask everyone. Tell me about your first computer. I remember going to college and having the Apple with the 2 dual drives, the floppies. And in fact, sometimes in classes today, I'll pull out my old 5 1/4 disc. And of course, the jaw drops. Students are like, well, what is that? But tell me about your first computer, Gabe.
It's a loaded question for me because my father worked in the computer industry probably way before a lot of people even knew what computers were. So I had an Apple IIe probably in the early 80s that my younger sister and I were working on. And it had a couple of floppy disk drives and it had a few very, very basic, I guess, intro to computing type of things. There was, gosh, what was the name of it? There was a turtle based program where you could program in it to do things and draw on the screen and stuff like that. And sort of, I think you could even learn Pascal, a programming language Pascal in it. And then, but that was a family computer. And then, actually probably when I was an early teenager, I think my father and I sat down and built a PC from scratch. And so that sort of, again, definitely fed into the kind of enjoying tinkering and enjoying poking at things kind of mentality. And for reference, I remember at the time, actually, we put in a 50 megabyte hard drive. And I remember thinking I'm never going to fill this up. This is just going to last me my whole life. Why would I need anything more? In retrospect, how foolish was I, but how was I supposed to know?
No, that's great. So Justin, data science means a lot. That's an umbrella term. It's everything from data mining, visualizations, cloud computing, biostatistics. I mean, just what does data science mean to you?
That's a good, I hate to say it, right? If people, when I think of data scientists, I think of, And I'm joking about this because Google, when you join Google, you're called a noogler and you get this hat with a little propeller on the top, and it's in the Google colors. And so, you know, I would, when I first started my career, you know, that's what I would have thought a data scientist person was a, you know, person that was so deep, so knowledgeable there. And even some of my esteemed colleagues that I used to work with at SAS, I would call a lot of them data scientists because they were, you know, known in their field of analytics, and that's what I thought data science was. But as you know, as I progressed, that word has changed and evolved, and it's still changing now. Like Namrata, data scientist, call her that. A lot of the students coming out doing masters in MBAs, etc., being taught analytics and using analytics in business, they could be called data science people as well. So I think, you know, my initial impression of, you know, someone being in the actuarial area, or, you know, generalizing what people would call a propeller head, was what my first impressions were 23 years ago. But now, you know, the word data science is anyone, to me, that is looking at data and using techniques to try and understand what happened, what could happen, and potentially what could be the best possible outcome that could happen, right? And that data is not just tabular format, right? It could be unstructured data, text, it could be video, it could be images. It's just amazing. And then the explosion of data, you know, with connected devices and the Internet of things sending so much data through now, video, being able to do amazing things that you probably didn't or wouldn't think about could be done. Yeah, I would say that the term data science to me has evolved and changed to, you know, just someone that has an interest in solving problems with whatever they can get their hands on.
No, that's a great overview. Namrata and Gabe, I'd love for you to build off of that in the sense of data science. What are the areas that you might feel are still green versus very ripe? As in, where is this all going? Or areas that have been oversaturated? Namrata?
Sure. So I think the lines between data science and business analytics, a lot business intelligence are very blurred, and every organization kind of interprets them on their own. But in terms of which analyses or tools I think are really taking off lately, I would say I personally have seen a lot of value in natural language processing. We've made some huge progress in that field recently, and there's a lot of opportunity to use natural language processing in a way that hasn't really been taken advantage of yet. So that's something that's been very top of mind, and we're expecting to see a lot of growth on in the next few years. Another thing is just geospatial work. Luckily, we've gotten tons of image data, video data, spatial view, things like that, that allow us to add in another dimension to all of the geospatial data we already have. So not only can we now plot points using lat long, but we can use a Google API to get the square footage of pretty much any given building in North America. And that is a huge advantage. And I'm sure many people have heard of case examples of like mapping out how full a Walmart parking lot is to estimate returns for the next quarter, things like that. Using those sort of analytics, teams are able to bring that data to the forefront of business decisions. And that's something that's really top of mind as well. But while those are some really niche analytics that I think are really interesting and are going to bring a lot of value, I think there's still a large proportion of companies that haven't even done the basic business or data analytics. And that's a lot of my work at Bain. So we will have some cases where the client already has a huge data science team and has great work already, and they need us to come in and step in as the experts and help them bring things to the next level. But a lot of our cases are clients who have data and still don't really know what to do with it. And so just bringing them into this world, showing them what machine learning is, how they can work together with data science and the business decision makers, how that dynamic works, that's a lot of our work as well. So I'd say that while there are some technologies that have been used left and right, there's still a lot of companies that haven't taken advantage of them yet. And so there's a room across both ends of the spectrum. There's technologies that are new, up and coming, but also bringing those easy to digest, understandable technologies and tools to use in a lot of companies.
Now, I'm glad that you clarified that, because everybody's told to collect data, and that collection starts, or it's almost completed, and then that next step, now what? And that's where that fear kicks in. And who in the organization, high up on the leadership chain, wants to speak up and say, we don't know what we're doing. And so it just sits there. So Gabe, would you want to continue to build on that data science and what's
I
right
think
and what's green?
I think both of my colleagues hit it on the head. I want to start with what Namrata said, because I think you really nailed it. That like the table stakes are higher because you're now expected to collect data. You're expected to be collecting data on every little thing. But if it's just sitting in a warehouse somewhere, so what, right? And you have to be able to service it and work with it, and you need people that are skilled at doing that. But I also think, like I was definitely nodding my head, either actually nodding my head or just doing it, thinking it while Justin was talking as well, because I think we've evolved so much. Like just thinking 10, 12 years ago, data science was such a new term, a data scientist was such a new thing. And as someone with a statistics background, frankly, I was like crinkling my nose at it because it just sounded like, someone who was a non-expert who thought they knew what they were doing. I think it has evolved into someone who knows statistics, who knows what I'd call like data munging or like data janitorial work, parsing, scraping, formatting data, and also knows visualization. And it's sort of evolved into like someone that knows how to use data effectively, past what's just traditional statistics. It gets into business analytics. It gets into differentiating from a lot of different things. And it's really just like what a well-rounded statistician would do. And now a decade later, 12 years later, it's, more in demand than ever. And you're talking about AI, and you're talking about, again, data collection. And, I think Justin gave a lot of interesting examples. The one thing that I was thinking was metadata is itself data. And, knowing your metadata is pretty important too. And so data science is looking pretty strong. And you don't hear sort of the arguments from more traditional statisticians or other more traditional disciplines anymore, because they realize that like, they too can be data scientists. There were overlapping skills to start, and that overlap has seemed to increase over time, but the labels seem to grow less important as a statistician becomes a data scientist, and data science learns more analysis. And so, when people ask me what I do, I don't necessarily say anymore that I'm a statistician. I talk about what I'm actually doing, not like, what my degree on the wall says on it.
No, that's a wonderful overview of that. So in terms of us putting on our hats, we put on our caps as being a job seeker. And I'm a firm believer that most great companies are going to train you and teach you what they want you to know and what they want you to do. So with that being said, what have you found to be your go-to? As in what particular skill set or software, or what do you do that has helped you so that you are able to be flexible and you can adapt? And I want to start off with Justin on that. Is there a particular go-to or foundation that you found that's helped you?
I guess for me personally, I subscribe to my own belief that I always wanted to be a continual learner. And so in my role being a customer engineer, having to talk to different customers with different problem sets has led me down very many rabbit holes. But just being flexible and having that attitude of I always want to learn something new, and if I don't know it, then I'm not gonna be be afraid. I'm going to reach out and ask colleagues or people that I've met along the way for help, because one day I could be talking about compute infrastructure. The next day I could be talking about security. The next day I could be talking about vision analytics. I honestly don't know what each day will bring. Sometimes, especially I'm talking to new customers, for the existing customers, it's there. But my own mentality and belief of being a lifelong learner has what's driven me to keep exploring new and different things, even if it's not in the area of data analytics, but just having that, me personally, that mindset. So I guess for me, the foundation, if I go back to looking at my university career, when I was going through university learning computing science, they told us, hey, we don't want you to specialize in any language, but we want you to be able to understand basic constructs and apply them to whatever new language comes out, so you can be flexible and do that. So believing in yourself, having a great attitude, and being flexible and open to change and open to learning, for me, I think that's the structure that's led me to where I am, and I think will continue to lead me to whatever crazy path happens to come up tomorrow.
I'll take someone who knows how to think and is unafraid to ask questions more than someone who's an expert in one particular programming language is, 9 times out of 10, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say channel the inner child. I have a 4-year-old right now that just won't stop asking questions.
Yes.
Why this? Why that? So if you can keep that, go back to when you were 4 and channel that inner child through all the way through your life, I think would be great. But sorry, Deborah, I didn't mean to re-interject.
No, I wanted Namrata to jump in here and share what is your go-to or your foundation, things that have helped you.
I mean, I think we're all in agreement here. I personally use Python a lot in terms of technical work. Python enables you to kind of do anything you could want, which is really neat. And then for visualization, my go-to is Tableau, just because I'm super comfortable with it and it's easy to share with clients who might not have a Tableau license. So technical, those are 2 really useful skill sets that I think anyone in data science should at least have a good grasp on. But another big thing that I don't know if we've really touched on this yet is just being able to interpret the results and convey them to normal English to someone who doesn't have a statistics, computer science, data background, and make sure that they can understand and actually utilize whatever output you're giving them. And so that's something that's really big in my work, and then also in recruiting is we look for someone who can upskill on the technical skills, because the technical field is constantly changing and growing. So we understand that no one's going to be top of that forever, but being able to have a mastery on the technical work, but really drive home the results and what's actually impactful and actionable, that's something that's really important.
And that's really, really important. I definitely want to transition to that. It's one thing us speaking as job seekers. Now I want to put the hat on as as in we are the employer. And now we're looking for great people. And the research is very clear that soft skills, communication is most important. How do you communicate? In the days of just, drilling into the data, sitting in your cube with your computer, life is about group work, whether it's a family, professionally. So how can you communicate? Gabe, you want to start us off here? Now you are the employer. What do you look for? What stands out?
I think communication is key, like my colleagues were saying. I think it's all about knowing your audience and understanding when to get technical, when you need to get technical, when you need versus when you need to keep it high level. And also thinking about like what the audience's like appetite or attention span is going to be as well, and adapting to how they communicate. Thinking about how I would communicate, some findings to a coach versus a decision maker versus a scientist versus another data person. It's going to vary a lot. I think foster, but also like appealing to their own sense of curiosity and figuring out what they're curious about, and also like how they're coming, considering what their point of view is already. Are you trying to convince them of something that they disagree with, versus are you trying to reinforce what they already think is right and are trying to provide them with supporting evidence for it? And so, do you need to really build up the case little by little, versus are you already just reinforcing something that they already believe? And knowing your audience that way, I think is pretty important.
Thank you. I'm thinking about communication, not only from, I'm thinking about language, not only from the perspective of computer language, but also speech. I think it is so important today that we learn more than one language. Most of us, English is our first language, but learning other languages can help us in how we communicate with others and how we actually analyze data as well. We want to trigger our brains. We want our brains to work in different ways, and learning another language is one of the best ways to get that brain firing, so to speak. Justin, you want to add anything in terms of your being an employer, what you're looking for, what stands out?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, similar to my colleagues, right, on the panel have said, communication is definitely key. What I would call one of the unicorns out there is someone that can actually talk to the business, but as well talk deep in the technical, right? That there are a few unicorns on here, and you're probably looking at some of them on the panel in the way they can talk and the way they can articulate the piece. But also, you need to be able to listen, right? So as much as you want to focus on your technical skills, I think you should also focus just as much effort on your soft skills, on communication and listening, because a lot of the times, similar to what Gabe and Namrata and yourself have said, Dr. Stroman, is you need to be able to listen and understand what the customer is trying to convey to you. And sometimes they can't convey what their problem actually is. It takes a lot of listening and a lot of back and forth questioning to get to the actual meat of the problem, if there is one, and to the solution. But being able to and apologies if my room went dark, I haven't been moving enough because the lights just went out, but being able to listen and then be able to articulate that back. So I would definitely say, as much emphasis that you put on your technical skills, put as much on your communication and listening and soft skills as well, from that standpoint.
Now, we all know that every person has their own experience and the way they express it. And oftentimes, when we're talking about companies, we're talking about academia, we're looking at someone's credentials. Now, graduate school, some people believe, especially in this space, that you can do your own learning, right? There's so much that's available now in the digital online space to teach yourself. And then there are others who believe that I do want a university name behind my, in my experience, in my CV, on my resume. And so I don't know if there is a right answer, there probably isn't, but what value do you all find in getting formal education through a university, whether it's a master's degree, a doctorate degree? What's your take on that? Namrata?
I think both are correct in their own ways, and it comes down to a lot of different factors, such as what resources you have at your disposal and things like that. But I personally think that a huge advantage of an accredited program is the connections that come with it, the networking and the professional training you get. The program I went to, the Institute for Advanced Analytics, was founded by Dr. Rappa and works very closely with a lot of tech leaders in the RTP area in North Carolina. And we got a lot of training and exposure on how to solve real world problems. We did a practicum project, which signed an NDA with the client, worked with them the entire year on a real business data analytics use case. And so that sort of exposure is hard to come by in an academic setting, or kind of if you're doing training on your own, it is hard to get that level of exposure and regular contact with a client. And then the alumni network or the recruiting networks, those are also advantages of a formal education. However, I have seen a lot of people who come from industry who have exposure to data science upskill their own capabilities, and since they already have a pre-existing network, use that to their advantage and use that to find their next step. And so I think it could go both ways. If you are coming in from if you don't have a lot of experience, I think that a university program is really helpful in helping you jumpstart that career.
Gabe?
So there's a great, I guess, author slash thought leader out there, a guy named Bruce Schneier, who does a lot in like information security type of things. He's written about everything from encryption technology to the TSA. And he has a great book called Liars and Outliers. And I'm usually not in the business of recommending books or people, but he is. And it talks about trust in society and how trust is established and what it means. And I think in terms of getting a degree versus other stuff, I think at the end of the day, you need to know that someone has the skills to do the job. And I think like for better or worse, like if you have a degree in statistics or computer science or whatever, like that's like an easy demonstrable way to say like, you know, to a large extent, you can trust that like I've developed the skill set or at least have the background to have the skill set to have this, right? Without that, I think it's like you kind of, it's a little harder to be able to say for sure, like that someone has that skill set. It's not impossible by any means, right? If they have an established job history or whatever, but like it's kind of like a shortcutty type of way, at least to me, like to know like someone's got that skill set because you know, you trust that like whatever university wouldn't have given them a degree, you know, let them graduate unless they were able to demonstrate to them as well. So I think it's like a shortcut to like sort of establishing that trust.
Absolutely. So thank you for your great responses. I love what you're sharing. Double down on each and every one of your thoughts. So we're now opening up. We're opening up the Easy Retro. And so look at the chat box. You can see the link there to submit your questions to this amazing panel. While the questions are coming in, I want to go ahead and have Justin respond to that as well. Justin?
Yeah, absolutely. Similar to what my colleague said, when you're starting out in your career, unfortunately, I think that the degree kind of is a check mark item. And even today, since we're talking about data science, and I think about the process that a lot of companies use, they're throwing it through a document parser and they're looking for key things. And that's how you get bucketed into whether you get called or whether you get passed over. Right, so they're looking for certain things, but with that said, it's a little unfortunate that you do require or may require a degree, but to me, experience is key. When I do interviews now for Google, I don't actually look at the people's resumes anymore because the questions that we ask are in a certain format, so it's standardized, and we're looking for experience and we're looking for the person communicates. And so some people do look because by the time they get to the interview that I do, they've already passed through all the checks. And so if I was to start my career out again, I would prioritize probably trying to get as much experience as possible and getting a variety of experience, because that's what's going to differentiate you from someone else. And if you can, look at getting internships similar to what Namrata says, because that may be the way that you can get that hands-on and get that experience. So there are a number of companies out there that do internships or fellowships in those areas. So I would say definitely try and do that because there's summer programs, especially in the Triangle here. I know there's a lot that do it, and a lot of big tech companies do it as well. So that's one way to get experience. But yeah, I would say trying to get that experience and a variety of experience will help you get on the path. But I don't think I have a good answer to do whether you need a degree or not. But as I said, once you've got some of that experience in your belt, unfortunately, the degree doesn't become as big a factor anymore in my case anyway.
No, that is very, very important. In fact, This reminds me of when I'm in the employer space and I'm looking for candidates, I'm looking for colleagues. I like to see initiative. I love folks with the entrepreneurial spirit. And so internships are great. If you can secure them, if you use your network, whether that's from high school or the local community. I like people who identify problems and then come up with answers. And that is a part of their resume, that is a part of their CV, that's a part of their portfolio. And I remember having one student in particular who wanted to learn about data science, in particular sports analytics with lacrosse. He had never played lacrosse in his life, but he was able to work with the local coach, understanding that data is data is data, and he understood what their problem was, and he came up with his own algorithms, he came up with his own path, the software, everything, and that made him valuable and that made him stand out. So find problems in our society and then create the answer or offer up solutions, and that's a good way to promote yourself. Gabe, we've got a question coming in for you. What does professional mentoring look like in the data science in your workplace? What does mentoring look like?
That's a great question. I think to me, it's like rounding out skill sets. That's how I've done it, at least in the past. And I think it's figuring out, like we've talked about, how data science has a few different facets to it. Like there's the analytics or statistics or whatever. There's working with data, formatting it, scraping, whatever. There's the visualization, communication. And for me in the past, just to be honest, like I think earlier in my career, I struggled with the data viz aspect of it. You know, it was landing the plane that I really struggled with. And so having people I worked with that could help me figure out how to do that better, you know, to fill out that, you know, you want all the legs of the stool to be even or else you can't sit on it. And so figuring out how to even those out, how to broaden out where your skill set is lacking, and working with people on that is, I'm not sure if that's answering the question, but that's kind of how my approach has been, both as a mentor and a mentee. Is that the right word? I think it is.
Mentor, mentee, yes.
Yeah. Maintainer, I don't know.
Absolutely. So many questions coming in. We appreciate your engagement. Do know that if we don't get to all of your questions, that we will follow up and we will get answers to you. There are a number of folks, they're curious about your graduate program and the wonderful work that's happening at NC State. I've been very blessed to work with Dr. Rapa as well. Tell us more about what you did in that program and how you feel it is very, very valuable to you today.
Of course, I feel like I'm giving a sales pitch, but I really couldn't recommend this program more, especially if you are new to the field of data science. I think the IAA, the Institute for Advanced Analytics, does a fantastic job of curating their program. They update it every year based off of what skills they see are most valuable in the market. They have a great panel of instructors and professors. Alumni come back to teach special workshops, and it's very relevant. A big part of the program is the practicality of data science. So we say that the IAA is a mile wide and a couple inches deep, because you won't become an expert in any single particular analysis. It's just a year-long program, but you do get exposure to pretty much every type of analysis, and you learn how to learn different types of analyses. And so you get that foundation that's really useful, especially in the real world, or if you want to go into consulting like myself, where you get put on a case and you find out you have to do some analysis that you haven't even thought about in a couple months. So picking that back up and getting up to speed on something, that's something you really learn at the IAA, is understanding how to ask the right questions and get things under your belt. I'll talk really quickly about the structure at the IAA. So you do your academic coursework, different professors, instructors learn different methodologies. You start from the ground up. So the IAA does a great job of bringing in people from all sorts of backgrounds, math, science, business, but also teachers and biostatisticians and kind of any sort of field that ever existed. and they bring everyone up to speed in the summer and then kick off the actual curriculum in the fall. The website is very informative. As you can tell, it's a data science program. So they have tons of metrics on application, recruitment, class profiles, job metrics like average salaries after graduating, return on investment, things like that. So I really encourage everyone to look at the Institute for Advanced Analytics website, and their recruitment team, especially Valerie Schwartz, is amazing. So happy to talk more about the program afterwards, but it's a great intro to data science and a great segue into starting your career.
Thank you for that. There are a number of questions about, again, the formal education, being an undergrad versus a graduate, having that formal education. We want to double down on it's about experience. It's about experience. So there are people that can go from undergrad and immediately get a wonderful job and continue to learn because companies are going to teach you what you need to know. And then there are folks who get the graduate degree and they wanted more education, and then they go into a position where it's a wonderful position. So we want to make sure we're sharing with you that it's about experience. And you can create your own experience without paying a lot of money for formal education. Now, to Namrata's point, if you have, and Justin's, if you have the assets, if you have the ability to go to school, that's wonderful. But you don't have to have a degree to be a data scientist. You don't have to. There are a lot of questions about sport analytics. Gabe, you want to talk a bit about sport analytics and possibly what people might look for or what type of experiences would be helpful?
Yeah, I see a couple questions on the board that sort of are related, and I'm going to I want to touch on them all. Like, I think someone asked about domain experience as well, and I will say that learning your terms and just immersing yourself in understanding whether it's a therapeutic area because you're working in pharmaceuticals or clinical trials, or it's sports and you want to focus on a particular sport, or anything like that. I think understanding your domain, understanding your area that you're working in is super important, frankly, so you don't look like an idiot around people that are always going to know much more about it than you do. But I also think having that humility and understanding that there's always going to be people that know much more about it than you is important as well, and that you can learn from everyone around you who is going to bring something different to the table. With sports specifically, I think it's a lot about just like show me, don't tell me. There's 1,000 people, especially more so when I was working for the Spurs, who you would contact you every day that say that they're really passionate about it and that want to get into sports and they're going to do whatever it takes and blah, 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 but then don't have anything to say about it. What have you done about it? Have you written a blog? Have you published a book? Have you done anything? No, but I'm really willing to. Okay, well, so I think it's just putting yourself out there and starting to develop it, starting from the ground up and developing, a paper trail, so to speak, of things that you are doing. And don't be afraid to start small. You don't have to like swing for the fences right away. And build up your portfolio, build up your, demonstrable work that you're doing, and show that evolution actually is pretty important.
Thank you. I'm a firm believer that it is not what you know, it's not who you know. It's who knows you on a favorable basis. It's not what you know, it's not who you know, it's who knows you on a favorable basis. In particular, when you're talking about competing with others who are qualified, because everybody's going to have their foundation of technical skills, knowledge. Some people might be good at Python or R, all of that. So the question is, who can you connect with? You don't want a blind resume to go out because now you're in a stack with 1,000 others. Namrata stated this, networking is so important, which goes back to our point around communication. Introducing yourself to people. When you're at a ball game at a museum or any type of event, telling people what you're interested in, because somebody might know something. Someone might know where to connect you. Someone might know where the internship is available. So you have to share what your interest would be. And bottom line, you have to be kind. Jerks don't get very far in this world, right? So be kind to people. And whenever someone does help you, ask them, how can I help you? Even if they're an executive with some major company that's doing unbelievable things, always ask people, how can I help you? We are getting close to the end of the hour. I want to go around the horn and give our wonderful, wonderful panelists the opportunity for some closing thoughts, recommendations, ideas for this space around data science. I want to start with Justin.
Yeah, I just like to echo what my colleagues said, right? The NCDS, great resource to finding, how to learn about data science and get into that. Some of you all are asking, what should I put on my resume? Of course, it goes without saying, if you didn't already know it, you got to meet the prereqs, right? And if you don't meet the prereqs, then you're going to get ruled out because that's what they're looking for at a bare minimum before you can get past the next level. And then the nice haves, the secondary level things are what they look for next. But similar to what Dr. Stroman just said, right? What differentiates you from everything else is what else you put in on your experience, how you've gone into that specific area or what interests you, because you've got to try and figure out what's going to differentiate you and stand out from the pile. So if, similar to what Gabe said, if I'm looking at a pile of resumes that come in for sports analytics and I see someone that says, hey, I started, trying to do video of my golf swing and I ran a few algorithms to try and explore that. That's going to resonate a whole lot more than just the regular 50 that are in that stack that may not have pointed that out. So just little things about you utilizing that out will help you get there. And then, practice interviews with whoever you can. Try and talk to your parents, friends, ask them to help, to reach out, because when you're starting out at a younger age, you're talking to people who are a few years older. So they've been through interviews, they can give you tips and techniques that can help you go through that. And when I was starting out, I got a lot of help, and now I'm kind of on the other side where I try and help out. So I try and give back because people helped me along the way. And as Dr. Stroman said, don't be a jerk, because people helped you in your career, whether small or large. So my feeling is if you can give back, so I try and give back now. So when family, friends, or even friends that I've worked with, their kids come up to me and ask me, how do I do this? I give my time out, because you just never know when it's going to come back. And I try and be a mentor. So whenever new people come into Google, especially interns, and they want to go through rotations, I try and volunteer to help them out so I can share my knowledge. But also, it's two ways. You just never know what you learn from, young minds and new thought processes. So I learn just as much as they learn from me.
Thank
Pay
you.
it forward. Terrible movie, great concept.
Gabe, closing comment?
No, I think it is a lot about who you know, but making those networking and like Justin said, don't be afraid to connect to people. You never know what you can get from them and they can get from you. And knowing your audience again. Like I had someone who literally sent me a book that they published about sports analytics that I'd never heard of, and the note attached was basically like, I'm sure once you read my book, you'll see that I'm a perfect candidate. I'm not going to spend the time to read your 300-page book. Just like that, because you think that it's good. And then other people have reached out to me with like very pointed, specific, a couple sentences that would catch my attention and hadn't published a book. And I was more interested in talking to those people more because it's clear that they knew their audience. And I think that's a big part of it too. Just when you're talking to people and just don't be afraid to ask questions and be willing to learn from those around you that have very different backgrounds. And that's what my mentors have taught me.
Yes. So we're going to close out with Namrata's comments. Do know that the recording will be made available to you. And after Namrata, then we're going to pass it to Amanda. Thank you again. Namrata?
I'll keep it short and sweet. I think that by being here, you're taking the right step to get started. And one of the biggest things that helped me was literally meeting anyone and everyone that I could meet in this industry, sending them a message on LinkedIn, asking to stay connected, and, you know, just here and there building my network. I see a lot of questions about projects. Projects are important. They don't have to be super structured. They just need to be documented, like Gabe was saying. And it could be about anything that you're passionate about, but having that experience under your belt is super helpful. Glad to be here. Glad to share whatever experience and knowledge I can. Thank you for your time.
Thanks so much, folks. So as we wrap up today, I just want to say again, a huge thank you for joining us today. I hope this has been a helpful experience. We kindly ask that you take a moment to complete our panel evaluation. We use this information, folks, to improve our work and kind of deliver the content you want to hear. So this is important information for us. Just give us a second to let us know the content that you're interested in. And finally, it is my pleasure to announce that for the first time ever in the spring, we will be offering a short course series. We typically offer this for 1 week in the summertime, usually ranges between 10 and 12 courses. But in the spring, we will be offering a short course series on 4 different data science tools, platforms. For those of you who are interested in polishing up on some skills or learning some new ones, we will be offering an introduction to effective information visualization course, a visualization for data science in R course, an intro to Python, and basics of R for data science and statistics. So it's really valuable for a wide range of people. Please feel free to share the news near and far. You are the first people hearing about this today. So congratulations. And with that, I'm going to say thank you again to our esteemed panelists and Dr. Stroman. It is such a joy to learn from all of you, and look forward to interacting again in the future. Thanks, folks, for joining. Thanks for those amazing questions you put out there. We will be following up on those in our wrap-up materials. All right, take care, everyone. Have a wonderful day.